Hey, Sarah, thanks so much for joining me on a well-designed business today.
Hey, Luann, thanks for having me, for inviting me.
This is super fun for me. I have to tell you, having interviewed many people from your family and met many people in your family at events and different things. And you and I have crossed paths as we've met each other in Boston at the design center there in High Point and other things.
Sure.
But this is fun for me to have a chance to understand not only your perspective of this incredible legacy company that you're part of, but also your individual role at the company now. So before we get to where you are now, VP of Furniture, tell me, what was your first job in Kravet? And was that your first job coming out of college? Like, get me up to speed on Sarah.
Sure. Well, first, thank you. That's very nice of you to say. So my first job at Kravet, when I was 23, I somewhat on a whim decided to move to Boston. I was out of school and had been working in New York for a bit and decided to try something new. So I moved to Boston and I worked in our showroom. And I was supposed to be there for 1 year, spend a third of the year on Kravet, a third of the year on Lee Joffa, a third of the year on Brunswick, which was just recently acquired at that time, and then come home. And it didn't exactly turn out that way. It is now 13 years later, and I still live in Boston. Um, but
Married with two children.
yes, exactly. Have strong roots here now. Um, but I ended up loving the city and never left. But I did work in the showroom for 5 years, and to say that was a good experience is really an understatement.
Mm.
There's no replicating what you learn just standing in front of a customer, having any sort of question thrown at you and be expected to know the answer. It's the type of training you could only hope for.
That's awesome. You know, it's funny. I've had designers on the podcast over the years mention that the however many of them that have ever spent time in like retail furniture showrooms, they're just like best training ever. And that's exactly the exact experience that you're talking about. Kravet, as far as you're concerned, a showroom in the Boston Design Center is like a retail showroom for your wholesale client, right?
Sure, yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. That's so funny that that bears true across multiple, opinions and personalities. Because it is what you said. It's like you're there, boots on the ground, and a client who is very important to you and to your company needs information, right?
Yeah, you have to be nimble. You really have to know everything, or at least pretend like you know everything.
Or know how to find out,
Yeah,
right?
how to fake it till you make it. Yeah.
Yeah, because what are some of the challenging things? Like maybe a designer comes in and something is been back ordered and they're now finally mad enough to come in and face to face, or just having a strange request. Can something be made custom? What are some of the things that were those learning moments for you?
I think one of the things, ironically, that challenged me the most when I started working in the showroom was furniture, because I had grown up learning about fabric, talking about fabric, and I felt really secure talking about fabric. And then all of a sudden, someone asked me to quote a sectional, and I was like, oh my goodness, how? How do I put the pieces together? So there was just that mental hurdle of, this is something that I don't really know about, and how do I learn about it enough to not only convince someone to buy it, but continue to do that every single day?
Mm. And how do you get that? Is there a hierarchy in the showrooms of the more seasoned professionals there that they have training with you, or is it just like, hey, baby, get in the deep end, swim, go get the book and figure it out?
I mean, it's a mix. The team in Boston is so wonderful and very furniture focused. So there was plenty of opportunities for me to learn from example, which was incredibly helpful. And also, you really don't know until you have to do it. So part of it is standing on the floor and talking to someone about a chair and learning while you're at it.
Yeah, yeah. Because it's not just learning how to price it, which is challenging, but it's also learning why when you're done pricing that sectional is $15,000. What
Right.
makes it that value, right? You have to be able to understand how it's made and all of that.
Absolutely. And a comfort
Yeah.
level of standing in front of a customer and their customer. and explaining what quality means.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And you're right. Like, the fabric, it's not as nuanced, right? We know the difference when we're looking at a brocade. It's you can, even if the garden variety human can just turn it backwards and see how many more stitches are there. Like even if that's the only thing you say, look at all the more work that went into that,
Sure, yeah.
right? So, okay, so you spend 5 years working in the Boston Design Showroom, and I'm hearing you that it was a great training ground for understanding furniture and so forth. But you're selling lighting there and rugs there. The curated Kravet line is probably there as well. So you really are having to learn across multiple, product lines, right?
Yeah, you're sort of thrown into the mix and you have to learn everything. It's just in which order you learn it, but there's no telling what a customer is going to come in and ask you about. So it's really, you know, you have to know at least a little bit about everything.
Mhm, mhm. And so did it turn out that you particularly enjoyed the furniture aspect of it, and is that why you continued in that path to now being VP of furniture, or was it a need? The company was like, "Look, you're good at it, kid. You're going that way." Like, how did that
Um,
work?
a little bit of both. I mean, there is something really thrilling about just getting a huge order and knowing that you sold it. So there was that, and you don't always get that same thrill when you're selling individual yardage, whereas when you sell a whole home of furniture, there's really something to cheer about. Um,
Right.
but also after college, when I moved back to New York, I worked for First Dibs, and it was really I had studied art in school, art history, and I thought that was tangentially related, and it was a very interesting experience. It was when First Dibs was really quite small. There were maybe 15 people who worked there. So it was early on, and everyone was doing many jobs. So what I
Mm.
thought would be one thing ended up being really focused on furniture and a little bit of the merchandising of the First Dibs website and how you decide not only what order pieces are shown in, how to prioritize, but also how to identify. So I spent a lot of time learning, what makes this piece mid-century versus, what makes this piece contemporary.
Oh, interesting. And so that was definitely a transferable skill coming over to the Kravet showroom then and, talking with different interior designers about furniture and so forth like that, right?
Yeah, it became a good foundation to know the canon of how furniture has developed, since Louis XIV to the present. Um, and it fit in with, my art history background, so I could marry everything into a picture in my own head, which
Hmm.
does make the act of selling furniture much easier.
Right, right, right. Now, it's funny that you mentioned you had the job at First Dibs because I feel like I could be wrong. You will correct me, but I feel like when your uncle Scott was here on the podcast, I think he said that first of all, you're fifth generation Kravet at the company now, and I feel like he said if you want to come work and you're in the family, you got to work somewhere else beforehand. Am I making that up, Sarah, or is that a thing in your family?
I would say it's a thing. It's maybe like a silent mandate.
Okay.
So yeah,
It's not like we're siding on the bloodline here,
right,
right? But
exactly. But yeah, it was something that appealed to me, regardless of what my future would hold. And, in a
Mhm.
similar vein, my brother worked in finance, my cousin worked in real estate. So we all sort of took different paths before ending up where we are now.
Okay. So now I know Daniel. Is Daniel your brother or your cousin?
Daniel is my cousin.
Okay, and which one is your
My
brother?
brother is Sander.
So I don't think I've met Sander. I think that I do not believe I've met him yet, and he's also in the company now as well.
Yes. Yeah, he works more on finance operations.
Oh, well,
So
that would be
a
why.
little bit less customer facing than Daniel or myself.
Yes, exactly, exactly. That makes total sense now. Okay, so now you do the 5 years in the showroom, and what's the next step on the ladder? And tell us about what is it about working like, what do designers need to know about Kravet furniture and what do you wanna talk about? The quality of the furniture, the distribution of the furniture? Like, where's your passion in this, Sarah?
Yeah, I mean, I think when it comes to furniture and Kravet, it's sort of a hidden gem. because, of course, textiles drives everything. It's our bread and butter, but furniture, I think once you find us, it's like a secret club and once you're in, you're in. Um, so we really have furniture throughout all of our 5 core brands from, you know, Kravet and the 3 we have levels of luxury within Kravet. So there's of course furniture in Kravet, in Lee Joffa, in Brunswick, in Dongia, and in GP and J Baker in the UK.
Mm,
So it really permeates throughout, and they all sort of form a bit of a hierarchy and a personality based on where they live. So within Kravet, we have something called levels of luxury, which is a way to help both our sales team and our customers understand a very broad line.
okay.
And it tells it in a good, better, best story. So if we start, at the entry point with good, that's a line that we call edge. And edge was really developed before the pandemic. It's been maybe 6, 7, 8 years. And the goal of edge was to compete with retail. To be honest, we heard
Mm,
from
mhm.
customers, "Oh, my client is making me go to Crate and Barrel, for example."
Right.
And we thought, "Oh, okay, well, we have that style product, but we need a lower price point." So it's really an entry level. It definitely skews more youthful, more modern, a little bit mid-century, but it's a really nice mix and is a good moment for a fourth bedroom or a basement or, a second home.
Right,
So
right,
trying
right.
to really fill that niche. And as you move up, we move to our from good to better is our Kravet Smart line. And
Mm.
Smart was really my dad's brainchild in 2008 when the world fell apart. It took a little while to hit our industry because, it tends to be that the 1% is protected for longer. But
Yes.
eventually, everyone felt the Great Recession. And his concept for Smart was we have so much furniture and we have so much fabric. What if the fabric was free on the furniture? So that's the idea of Smart. It's free because how Smart is free. So all of Smart fabric, which is a fabric line within our brands, is free.
I actually remember that introduction. I remember that introduction. I remember selling it. I don't think I've sold 10 pieces of furniture in my life, but, to your dad's brainchild, when that came out, I was like, "I could sell free." You know what I'm saying? And I remember at that time, coincidentally, I had um I had a direct client who technically should have had an interior designer. Like once I got into it with her, I was like, this is insane
Yeah.
that no one is overseeing this. It was like a 17,000 square foot home here to us local in Livingston, and she's having me do all the window treatments. And every time I want to say, well, what's the furniture going to be like in here? She's like, I didn't decide yet. And I'm like, oh, okay. So let's design $20,000 worth of drapes for your living room. But I have no idea what else is going on. And so it was crazy. And I remember it literally took me 3 or 4 starts in the process with her to finally just sell her the drapes that she wanted, because I kept going, well, you got to figure out what rug you're going to use, your area rug, what furniture. And finally, it was like the third or fourth time she was like, I want to commit to the draperies. And I was like, oh, bang on the head. She just wants to buy drapes. Just start selling. I ended up selling her $200,000 worth of window treatments over the next 18
Oh
months.
my goodness.
And that was when the Kravet Smart furniture came out. And anytime I was like, I got bar stools for this, I got a sofa for this, and that was the only time I really sold any furniture because it's not my bread and butter and I don't have the slightest idea what I'm doing. But the Kravet Smart line made it easy. It made it like, here, pick from these books. This is the price. Let's just keep it rolling.
Yeah, exactly. It's really meant to be solution oriented. So
Yeah, it's
obviously
exactly what
price
it
can
was.
be a solution. And right before the pandemic in 2019, we also launched Quick Ship within Smart.
Yep,
So, and in the pandemic, that became
that was a different story, right?
absolutely necessary.
Yeah,
But Quick Ship is for any of our smart fabrics with any of our smart
yeah.
frames, and we make it in 10 days. So,
I know, it was I got her bar stools in time for a pool party,
yeah,
for crying out loud.
yeah,
I'll never
exactly.
forget.
So that has definitely been a fun new addition to smart.
Yeah, okay. So that's the midline, and then what is the
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 good,
best
better,
line?
best. So the
Yes.
best within Kravet, we call it Kravet Design, and that's really it addresses every room of the house from kitchen to dining room to living room. And it is really where we do some collaborations, licensing. It allows
Mm,
us to explore different personalities, expand our visual language. So you'll see collections from Michael Berman or Jan Showers or Mabley Handler that live in the design level product. And
right,
that's
right,
where we
yeah.
get to do some of the jewelry for the room.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Yeah, because you're not only have your amazing team in your own studio there, but you also are reaching out and working with these other designers. And, I'll never forget the story of Mabley Handler on the podcast, and we'll link in the show notes to that episode because I just saw them in New York last winter. Corey Damon had an event and we went to it, and saw them there and just reminiscing on that amazing pitch that they did to you guys on the furniture line. But the idea that here is a very, successful design duo doing their work out in the Hamptons, loves Kravet, loves their rep, loves the company. And it's just like, the furniture isn't the kind of furniture that really I want to place out here. Like there's a gap in your line. And you have to listen to the episode because it really is just the whole culture of your company. It's having real conversations with their real clients, the real interior designers that you do business with, and listening and saying, "Oh, you mean you want it to look like this out here in the Hamptons?" Yes, we do. You know what I mean? Not a lot of companies do that, Sarah, right? Do you think, don't you feel like that's a unique attribute to your company?
Not knowing any other companies makes it hard for me to answer that, but I think one of the things that tends to surprise people is our willingness to change.
Yeah.
Having been in business for 5 generations, you may think, oh, they're kind of set in their ways, but really, the more innovation, the better. If there's an opportunity to try something new, whether it's technology and AI or furniture visualization and mapping, those are the things that we're interested in and we want to push forward. We want to be the first and we want to be the
Yeah,
best.
yeah. No, I have observed that all throughout, and I love that little dichotomy that like you could think of a fifth generation company as being with their feet in the mud, but it's exactly the opposite. I feel like each one of you comes along and adds a new spin to things, and the generation ahead of it is like, okay, what's your ideas? You know what I mean? I just I remember Scott talking about when your dad Carrie came on and he was like, okay, I'm coming on, but we're going to look at it this way. I was a lawyer. We're going to look at it from a business standpoint. And your grandparents and, Scott not going, no, we're not doing that. Right. Like it just feels like there's just these echoes of these types of snippets that I've heard throughout the years that really do confirm that innovative spirit and that innovative, even that interview with Jesse Lazarus talked about the way you guys go after innovation and want to be on the cusp of things. Well, I mean, how about the podcast? I don't know if you know the story, but when Jesse brought my idea of the podcast to your dad literally said the same thing as my husband said 1 month before. What's a podcast?
Yeah.
Like, right? I mean, we're talking about 2015.
Yeah.
And, to his credit, Jesse explained it. He's like, all right, sounds interesting. Take a meeting. You know what I'm saying? So it's just, it's great. It's a nice thing to have the two bookends of a solid history and foundation and business principles combined with that willingness to always just look out the box and see what else. So
Yeah. Yeah. It does
definitely,
make it
right?
fun. and
Yeah,
challenging.
yeah. Yeah. And by evidence as all your generations do keep coming in, because if it was, "No, this is the way we always did it, it's gonna stay that way," then you guys as young people, even when your dad and uncle and Scott were the young people, you wouldn't come in. It'd be like,
Right.
"Ugh." Right? So, okay. So talk to me. Okay, so we have these 3 different furniture lines, and then, of course, you mentioned that they go across the different brands.
Yes.
So and the different brands have a different personality. So I might go look for one type of, say, type of furniture in one brand versus another. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, so my actual responsibilities, I focus on product development for Lee Jofa, Brunswick, and Donkia. Um, and it it gives me a great opportunity to stretch because I think at my heart I'm a Lee Jofa girl, but sometimes I get to play in the world of Donkia. So when it comes to Lee Jofa, it's, of course, a print house, very floral, feminine, and the styling itself leans traditional, if not light traditional. So keeping the English heritage in mind is how the furniture is designed as in the same way. So lots of skirted pieces, English arms,
Mm.
how many different ways can you do a skirt? Are there ruffles? Are there
We're gonna
pleats?
put buttons and we're gonna do
Yeah.
trim and
Yeah.
all the things, right?
Uh-huh.
Okay, so that's the personality of Lee Jofa.
Yes.
Prints, florals, English, heritage feeling in there. And this is your favorite. This is what resonates with you as a human, is
Yes,
what you're
as a
saying.
human.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's your style.
yes,
Yeah.
unfortunately, or fortunately, I live in a tall, high-rise building that is not even remotely traditional, so I don't get to reflect that in my actual home, but one day.
One day,
One
right,
day,
there's
yes.
time, yes. And so then Dongia, I know, is much more clean
Yeah.
lines, right? It's much more modern and all of that. Talk to us about the Dongia feeling.
So Jangia we acquired relatively recently during the pandemic, actually, and it is just a whole new level of modernity. It's a different approach to design. Whereas, in some of our other brands, sure, you can change the cushions or you can make it wider, you can make it deeper. And with Dongia, they really, in the past and in the present, we strive to make a design absolutely perfect as it is. So the cushions are specifically designed for that frame, and they're not necessarily the same as they would be in a different Dongia piece because this is what makes the frame sit perfectly. So it's that, you know, it's an entrepreneurial kind of American approach to contemporary design.
Okay. And am I hearing properly? It's we figured out the best seat for this. Don't think you're going to put a different cushion on here because it looks good this way, it feels good this way, it performs this way, and you think you know better, but this has actually been designed with intent.
Yes.
It's like you're not going to go change a Maserati and say, I'll take a different engine. It's like, no,
Right.
this is the engine, sweetie.
Yes. Yes.
Right? Like it's not just a casual thought. Whereas on a like you were talking the English style, cushy, floral pleats, yeah, you want it like 16 layers of feather or 2 layers of feather, right? Like that has a more flexibility, it sounds like you're talking about,
Yeah,
right?
and the styling itself lends it that way. Some people want a
Mhm.
full feather cushion, whereas some people want the sturdiness of springs.
Right.
And that makes sense for someone who's designing in the Lijofa vernacular, whereas someone who's designing in the Dongia vernacular, it's much more sparse and the furniture itself is the art. So, if we make it perfect to begin with, there's no need for changes.
Yeah. Well, and that's a good way to put it. They're really like art pieces. You wouldn't go into a gallery and say, "Love that, but could you just add a green tree here?" You're like, "Sweetie, there's no green trees in this." Right? And so the Dongia pieces are complete.
Yeah, and
Interesting.
when we acquired Donkey, it was kind of a fun full circle moment because when I was at First Dibs, I would categorize Dongia furniture and merchandise it because they sold antique Dongia pieces on First Dibs. So now to be
Oh,
able
whoa.
to work on Dongia furniture, it feels like a real privilege.
Oh, fun. That is fun. Okay, cool. And then what is the Brunswick and feed? This is a French influence, a French styling. What's
Yes.
what's different from the Lee Jofa there?
So Brunswick is, yes, definitely has a French influence. There's Art Deco references.
Mm.
Um, and the pieces themselves, it's meant to be the ultimate sit.
Ah,
So each piece sits beautifully, and you have the option to make it as you want. So we don't, with Brunswick, it's really meant to be almost like a workrooms approach, in that if you want to change from a pleated skirt to a ruffle skirt, no problem. You want to add trim, you want to change the cushions, you want to change to a bench seat, whatever you want to do, that is all included in the price. So it's a luxury commodity that doesn't need to be nickel and dimed.
okay. I love it. I love it. And so you're working primarily with these 3 brands that you said. And what's the day in a life like Sara Kravet look like? Like, are you, people are pitching you with, product development and you're saying yay or nay, or that's like happening levels below you, or what do you do as the VP of furniture, Sara?
Um, a big mix. I actually spend about half my time on visual merchandising. So
Mm,
we have, you know, nearly 40 showrooms, and they're all treated like individual homes, so to speak, in that they have their own individual design. Nothing is cookie cutter. So what is
mm,
appropriate in Los Angeles is not something that's on the floor in Atlanta. So it's basically a never-ending interior design project. Um,
wow.
so we have, of course, a whole team who works on it, but I spend a lot of my time on that aspect of our business. On the furniture side, yeah, it's really a mix. We're sort of always in development for something. Um,
Mm,
so, for example, this morning I was working on some new metal benches for Lee Jofa. So just, finalizing scale, finalizing the finishes, getting ready to launch on the marketing material side. So it's every day is different.
okay, okay. So what's interesting to me and seems like a heck of a lot of pressure is here you are talking about, finalizing metal and, finishes and stuff. I mean, do you have a team of advisors or are you like, well, Sarah said that one will sell and 6 months later it's all sitting on the shelf. Like that's crazy, Sarah. That's a lot of like for any person in any company. It just seems like a daunting task is what I'm saying.
We absolutely have a furniture team. I think you've met Maria Brennan. She handles all of the
Oh, right.
Kravet product
Yes.
and oversees furniture as a whole. So we are definitely sounding boards. And, often I will send an image of something that I like over to the team and say, what do you think? Am I crazy? Do you hate this?
Right.
And so it's a constant, feedback loop. I'm
Right.
not doing it
Right.
in a
Right.
vacuum, but sometimes I do have to take a leap of faith that this chair will sell.
Right? Okay, but then now you go and test your theories, right? When you're doing this merchandising throughout the, I guess, country and world. You have showrooms not just in the US,
Right. We
right?
have showrooms also in Canada, Mexico, London, and Paris.
Yeah. And so that sounds like fun. Also sounds very stressful, but it also sounds like it's like yeah, and I gotta believe by the time you're turning one around, you're moving, you're probably doing multiples at a time, and they're no sooner done that another one is needing a refresh, and you're almost, it's like having the ultimate mansion and being able to redecorate it every single time you get to the last room, right?
And it's definitely a every single one is its own puzzle, because, there's requirements of what furniture should be there. There's new fabric collections that we want to share. There's new carpet launches. So how do you put all the pieces together in a way that still supports the style of that market, but, it produces a great ROI?
That's an interesting chess puzzle, right? So you want to use a certain furniture line, whatever style, but we have to take in consideration, oh, we've just launched a carpet line with Corey Damon or Tom Felicia, and we've got to incorporate that. And, how does that go with this furniture and the other things? That's a particular chess puzzle there. But you know what? Every furniture showroom, every Kravet showroom I've ever been in, it's just drop dead gorgeous. It's
Oh,
just
thank you.
crazy.
That's very sweet.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have interior designers who really own each showroom and take it as their babies, so they design them with
Yes.
intention.
Yeah. I remember when you guys moved over to the Steel Building in High Point
Yes.
and that showroom opening over there and, that new concept of all the different rooms, like the dining room, the bedroom, the study, and being able to showcase all of the pieces, but in context of the room being a use as opposed to looking like a furniture store where we just have 16 sofas in here, right?
Yeah, and, High Point is an interesting market because it's all about furniture, and that's not our everyday. So, to have the opportunity to approach furniture market in a very designerly manner, I think created a different experience for that market.
Yeah, yeah, it was I remember walking in and just feeling, "Oh, this just feels great. This just feels great." And, look, I'm sure in other markets, it needs to just look like a furniture showroom, but that really felt fun to feel like you're just walking through a story. You're part of a story here.
Yeah.
And then let's just, I mean, the rooftop bar. I mean, you hit the jackpot with that. Let's
The outdoor space is really great. And by the way, we have a lot of new outdoor product coming, so we'll definitely be
Oh,
using
good.
that space in future
Good, good, good.
markets.
Not that you can see it. There's so many people out on the rooftop, at least on Sunday night,
True,
right? It's
true.
like, wait, is there furniture under there? I mean, it's like the best place in High Point. Every single time I go to market, be like, oh, can you do this? Like, not at 4 o'clock on Sunday. I can't. No, ma'am. I am going to grab it.
That's sweet.
So, yeah, no, it's awesome. Okay, so now what does this mean? I got some notes that said that you represent distributed brands. Andrew Martin, Cole and Son. Oh, Clark and Clark makes sense to me. So these are what's the distinction here, Sarah? Talk to me. What does that mean?
Sure. So those are all different fabric lines that we represent domestically or in North America and sell through our showrooms. They are not brands that we own, but we have a relationship with them to be their distribution.
Got it.
So, for
Okay.
example, Andrew Martin, obviously a UK based company, we sell through our showrooms here in the US.
Okay. Okay. You are now making me remember because throughout the years, Kenny, my rep here at Window Works, Kenny Potos, you know, he first of all, hands down, best sales rep I've ever had across any sector of the window treatment market. And I don't say that full of nonsense. I am dead serious. The guy comes like clockwork. He checks on you. Do you need something? You call him. He calls you back. In 40 years, we've never had anybody hold a candle to him. There's been other really good sales reps, but his consistency and his dedication are unmatched. I'm going to be totally frank with you on that. But it now, like, I can picture the Andrew Martin book in the showroom next door. And now I'm like, oh, Kenny dropped that off there.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Like there's throughout the years, I've been like, where did this go? Like, who is this? Right. And then Kim will say to me, Ken brought it and he showed it to me and he showed it to you. You don't even remember. I'm like, oh, okay. Right. So that makes sense.
Yeah, and
And
those
yeah.
relationships really give us an opportunity to expand what we offer visually, into a style or colorways that might not necessarily be our bread and butter. Like for example, Clark and Clark has a really unique color perspective
Mm.
that really marries well into the fabric the fabric of what we do.
Yeah. 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 The Clark and Clark is a nice line too. You're right. I mean, it is. It's a good, like to your point, it blends in and you can use it well with your stuff. So talk to me about like where like all the furniture for Kravet is made. We are all US based on that, if I recall, right?
Yes, it's all made domestically, and GP&G Baker is made in the UK.
Okay. Right. But that's domestic for them.
Correct. True.
Okay. um, and the thing is, do you guys do you I don't even know. Do you I know that you do arranged with permission and appointments the the studio tour and the tour of the archives, which is incredible. I've done both. They're absolutely outstanding. Matter of fact, I have a designer friend of mine about a month ago. Her and her partner came in from the Midwest and met with Daniel and a couple of other people and did the archives tour and the studio tour. And she literally messaged me. She's like, "Oh my god, "That was so amazing. Have you ever done that?" I'm like, "Yes, I have. It's so cool." So it is something to do. Do you do that at the factory as well? Is that a thing there that a designer can see and learn how furniture is made? Or Luann's, why don't we just edit that
No,
out?
no, absolutely. We maybe 2 years ago, we acquired a furniture manufacturer that we had already been working with and makes a lot of our product there. And one of the things that our head of sales is working on is a tour, like you're talking about.
Yeah,
So a
yeah.
full education from, how does the fabric arrive and get inspected to the finishing to the packaging.
I cannot tell you how much you should not underestimate that. I mean, I'm one for the big picture. I am not one for, look, I don't need to know how the motor works. Just tell me which motor to sell my customer so the drape operates. Like, that's how I am, right? But over the years, whenever I've had the opportunity to do a factory tour, it has done 2 things. It has literally increased my language when I can then go to sell that product. Like, I get it. It makes sense, right? But it also every time has increased my affinity to that brand. I It could be your factory tour, Sarah, could be exactly the same as XYZ, but if I did yours, I feel like you're the it, right? Because you educated me, you taught me. What always happens on these factory tours, you see the people who make the product that you're eventually going to sell to a client, and you see the pride that they have in what their part of the process is. And 201, I think, it improves your client, the designer's ability to sell and their relationship to you. It really is
Absolutely.
something,
And
right?
as you go to multiple facilities, you really learn the heart of that particular style. So you begin to see, what makes their finishing different. Why are they so good at case goods or whatever their specialty may be? And it gives you an appreciation for when that product, makes its way finally to your home. It is an heirloom and it is meant to be cherished.
Now, speaking about the heirloom type quality product, we've got what you described was the 3 levels of furniture. When we get to that top level, which is of course where every designer, I shouldn't say that, a lot of designers strive to make those orders in that price point, right? Um, what is the difference, Sarah? What are some of the things? Not having the benefit of a factory tour, whether it's me or somebody listening, what are we saying to our customer why the Kravet Smart furniture is $5,000 for a sofa, but then the other one is 10 or $12,000? Or I might be wrong. Maybe it's 10,000, it's 30,000. What do I know from nothing?
Um, it's so frame specific, but in a general sense, the frames get more complex. So there's compound curves, they're more difficult to upholster. There's metal accents. There's self-decking. So lots of little details that, contribute to the differences. And, whenever someone asks me that, I think about how it's not one elephant that makes the difference. It's, you know, 100 different little elements that are elevated as you move up the ladder that then account for those changes. So
That is such a good explanation.
whether
That
it's the
really is.
density of springs or, the whether you're doing straight welt or bias welt, just all these little differences that don't sound like much individually, but when you add them all up, create an elevated experience.
Yeah, that's something I can sink my teeth into, having very little education in furniture. And what I like about that, Sarah, is it's something that I can imagine describing to the consumer that, it's because there's going to be different things. It could be a car, right? It's the car that doesn't have a cup holder and it doesn't have a sunroof. And then all of a sudden there's a cup holder and a sunroof. But then the next one has this heated seats. And then, it's got the defogging mirrors, like all that, like you just said, it isn't like this one has a sunroof. So this car is worth 50,000 more.
Right.
It's 15,000 little tiny things that contribute to the full luxury and quality experience of it.
Yeah, exactly.
Makes total sense. I love it. It makes complete sense. And then let's get a little bit into the nitty gritty of, lead times and placing orders and understanding all of that. So if a designer is listening, first of all, what I love is you don't have minimums.
No, we do not.
I mean, like, it's just crazy pants to me how it, like, that is one of the things. That's why I could go in for that one customer I had all those years ago and sell her 10, 15, 12 pieces because I didn't have to, like, buy $400,000 to get stocking dealer price and all of that. So walk a designer through
And
that. Maybe furniture is new to them and maybe they will come in and do the entry level, or maybe they will come in and do the best level. But how does it work to sell furniture with Kravet?
I mean, I think one of the most important selling features, regardless of, there's an assumption of a level of quality and, innovative design, but beyond that, it's about the relationship and it's about the customer service, and to know that not only are you working with a company that has been around 100 plus years, has financial security, but who will stand behind you. Because a lot of designers, they're, sole proprietors, one, two, three, four-person companies. And when something goes wrong, it can be very hard to, stand on their own two legs without any support. So
Yeah.
we really pride ourselves on customer service. And if we make a mistake, making it right. If you make a mistake, how can we be your partner? Um, so, beyond the fact that I think there's lots of new and fun designs coming out, um, that's the foundation that I think a designer wants to know when they're buying furniture.
I agree. And of course, I've said it 1,000 times over 1,000 episodes that, this is the truth of my 40 plus year experience with Kravet. And the thing about it is it's as simple as getting the trade application, putting your resale certificate on it, connecting your bank account, giving a couple of references, and you have an account. You
Yeah.
could walk into any showroom, pick a sofa, pick a yard of fabric, pick a rug, you could place an order and you're off to the races. It's just not any more complicated than that.
And even before that, we really try to open ourselves up to the future. So we have a program called Design Grad that focuses on students. So if you're a student in design school, you don't need your registration or your degree to open an account. You can open a student design account and come to the
Oh.
showroom, shop, take memos, ask questions. And then once you graduate and you start your own design business, it's really simple to just convert it from a student account to, a regular customer account.
Oh, that's interesting. That's great.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, and do I know that Ellen works often with the and New York School of Interior Design? I feel like she's very well immersed in that and always working on the student programs. Am I correct in that?
Yes, she is on the board of the New York School of Interior Design. So
Yeah.
certainly, support the students there, but well beyond, whether it's SCAD or there's local schools here. I mean, Boston is a college town, so there's lots of schools here. But really every showroom is open at this point to any
Right.
student.
That's awesome too because, well, and I've said this on the show as well. I mean, I can remember going back to the early 80s and having to go into the D&D building. And, I'm 22, 23 years old, and I don't know from nothing. I really don't. I mean, I was selling blinds and verticals. And then somebody said, well, can you make a valance? And I'm like, yeah, the answer is always yes. Yes. Yes, I can. I have no idea, but the answer is yes. I'll figure it out. And, I don't know. I think I saw an ad for Kravet in one of the design magazines, whether back in the day it was Traditional Home or whatever it was. And I called, and Ken called me back, and he was like, "Well, you should come into the showroom." He did come out to Jersey to meet me, and then I was like, I should go see what it's like. And I can remember, Sarah, look at me. I'm in a tracksuit. Okay. I'm like who I am through and through. And when I'm 22 years old, I do not know. This is the days when designers used to go around the D&D building in fur coats, like legit. Okay. Fur coats, diamonds, high heels, all the things. I will never forget the first time I walked into the D&D and I was like, oh, Toto, we're not in Kansas anymore. I remember thinking, whoa. And not only am I'm young, but I'm dumb. Okay. I don't know what I don't know. And I'm immediately not with my people. I'm just like, oh, these people don't look like me. They don't walk like me, right? And I remember going, up to the Kravet showroom, and but then there's the part of me that's like, you know what? My money's green too, and I need to buy stuff, and I'm walking in, right? But you know something? I will never forget it. Literally, I walk in, one person looks at me and smiles, welcome. I walk 3 steps further, another person, hi, how are you today? Can I help you find anything? And I'm doing that. I'm just going to look around a little bit, for a second. But it was such a singular experience in the 80s to walk in that environment in the D&D building and literally not look in place, and the contrast, because of course I did that, and I spent an hour at Kravet and ended up talking with probably Ken's brother,
Jay, yeah.
or his mom, right? And getting some information. But now I'm like, oh, this is fine. And I don't remember what showroom I walked into next, but I was like, oh no, never mind. We're going home. Because it was like, oh yeah, you don't belong here. Get out, right? And it's crazy. And so you guys are, look, that's been your culture. I'm telling you, before you were born, that was your culture, right? And now to continue that, to make young design students not feel intimidated to come in and let them go through the process of ordering the product and the memos and all of the things. And I remember, and I'm on a tangent here, but I think it's so important. It was maybe 6 or 7 months ago in one of the designer Facebook groups. And the question really was, I don't know how to have an account at Kravet. And I thought to myself, that's the easiest company in the world to have an account with. Like, there are no hoops to go through. You
Yeah.
just have to be a legitimate designer
Right.
business, period. You know what I'm saying? So it's awesome. I love it.
Thank you.
Now,
That's very kind.
yeah, yeah. Now, talk to me a little bit about what's on the horizon. Is there innovative things coming that you want to share? You were talking about, I don't know, AI, or what? Where are we going here, Sarah?
Yeah, we have almost like an obsessive need to stay ahead of things. So, yes, we're looking at AI. I'm sure you talked to Jesse. So, Jesse's leading the charge with AI and what that means and how it applies to our industry, or, virtual reality. And is that the future of our industry? How does that apply to the customer experience? And of course, the more practical tools of mapping fabric. So you have fabric to frame, applying wallpaper to visualize to a room in your home. So
Mm,
certainly technology, but so much of our core business is our showrooms. So we
mm,
continually look to expand our footprint. So we have 2 new showrooms opening this year, and really look to continue that strategic growth. And those are tech focused showrooms. It's a different shopping experience. You really shop by color, which we know is
mm.
fundamental to an interior designer. Um, so just really continuing to push ourselves outside of what's comfortable, and into what the future is.
So is this an initiative? Because I remember when the 200 Lex workspace opened a couple years ago, right? Of course, it's more than a couple because it's pre-pandemic. So it was probably 6 years ago already.
It's in
Feels like
that
a minute,
time
right?
vacuum.
Exactly, right? So when you talk about the new showrooms coming and the redesign of the showrooms being more tech focused, is because I remember that was very different, and the shopping experience is very tech focused there. So is it bringing that to more places, or is there another level of tech that you guys are working on, even beyond what I would have seen 4 or 5 years ago in the 200 Lex space?
Both. It's expanding our footprint with these, technologically advanced showrooms, and then looking at our core showrooms and how do we bring them ahead of the pack.
Hmm.
So we already have these scanners where you don't write down memo samples. You just scan, and while you're shopping, the memo librarian is pulling the samples. So when you're done, your samples are done. So that
That's
type of
amazing. It's like DoorDash for samples.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, so that type of experience within our showrooms, and how we can lean on technology to, keep us at the forefront.
Yeah, I remember some of those technological things that you guys did at 200 Lex. And I just, of course, again, I'm going back to the days when I used to come in and I would spend an hour, write all the memos down, and then I'd drop it off at the memo room, and then I'd go and do another show. And I used to start at the top and make my way down and, pick my memos at the 3 or 4 places I wanted to go. And then I would go back up again and then start going back to pick everything up.
Right.
You know what I mean? And being able to just scan. And then what I also remember was you'd get back and you would be maybe, searching for neutrals for, a client, whatever. And you'd have this rando, purple fabric. You're like, I probably wrote the wrong number down. Human error. Right? Yeah. Okay. And then, are there any exciting collaborations with influencers coming up that you can let the cat out of the bag on, or is that all hush hush?
Um, I don't think I can let the cat out of the bag just yet, but we have a really wonderful collaboration coming out for High Point. It is fabric focused
Oh.
with a fashion designer.
Oh, okay. That's fun. All right. So we have to wait till
Yes,
October to
it's a
know what it
teaser.
is. That's fine. Oh my goodness. Okay. And then I think the one thing I didn't do is a little nuts and bolts on maybe order process.
Oh, sure.
Sarah, it's like, how do I actually place an order? What is typical lead times? Is your process to send updates on the status? Like just a little nitty gritty for someone visualizing, okay, I'll order Kravet.
Sure, sure. So, I mean, it goes without saying, but I'll say it anyway. You can go to any showroom, you can call us, you can talk to your rep, you can request a rep. All of those ways you can place an order. You can do your own quoting online, you can submit an order online for Lee Jofa, Brunswick, and Dongia, and soon to be Kravet. So it's really, we will service you the way you would like to be serviced. If you want to do it online, great. If you want to do it over the phone, great. So it's really as you like it.
I have to tell you, you know what? In the window treatment industry, when the big companies all went to online ordering, they removed the phone ordering. Or they removed, dare I say, the fax ordering. Okay. We actually finally don't have a fax, but that's only in the last couple of years.
I would have to check if we do. I feel like there's been kicking around.
Maybe in your dad's office or your mom's office.
Exactly.
But the thing is that, like, that I love that you will do it however you need to do it. You know what I mean? Because the last thing I'm going to do, I'm going to tell you right now, is place a furniture order online for the first 2 or 3 times and not have a human check it. Like,
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying? Right. And to that point, if I am younger and I am more tech savvy and I do happen to place my first couple of orders online, is there, and you may say there's not, and that's okay, but is there a human on the other end saying, you can't have this kind of this with that. You've got this gets kicked back. Or is it, hey, you ordered it, it's yours?
Well, no. There's always a human. So you can always call and speak to a real person, because I also hate the, automated conversations you get with, when you're calling the pharmacy. But
Yeah.
we have, over the past 5 years, we have built our own custom configurator. So that mental logic is already built in. So for
So you
example,
can't order the wrong
right,
things.
it knows that you can't put leather on a chair that's skirted.
Gotcha.
So it's very intuitive in that way. So it really will save mistakes before they happen. But by the same token, every order is looked at. So there's human and non-human checks in place.
Okay. Okay, good. I never forget when Hunter Douglas first switched to online ordering. And they sold it to us as that this was going to be a big time saver for us. And I quickly found out, no, I just became their data entry person is what happened. You know what I'm saying? But one of the very first orders I placed, a typical French door is 26-inch by 72-inch is the shade size that you will order for that. One of the very first orders I ever placed was for a French door, 26 by 72. But what did Luann do? She ordered 26 of them at
Oh my
26
gosh.
by 72. Yes, she did.
Well, you were well
And
stocked.
yes, and we get this in and we are just like, OMG, what are all these boxes for this customer that has one shade?
Too
So,
funny.
and to me, that's the kind of thing that a human might have caught. They might have been like, if I had done 12 at 26 by 72, that's different. But 26 by 72, it seems to me somebody could have caught that.
Yeah,
You know what
fair
I'm saying?
fair enough.
But there were no humans looking at it. It went right from our computer to their computer to the production line. That's how it goes. So, I mean, I thought a human could have been involved. It would have been great, but instead we had $3,000 worth of shades that just sat in the garage. And that, it was funny too, not for nothing, but it seemed like every French door we sold was 24 or 27, like so much for the standard that we were sure it was standard.
That's always the way it goes.
Anyway, I know, it's crazy, crazy, crazy. Anyway, so I think before we go, I think the only thing that I feel like is sitting on my brain that's curious. If you have anything, you feel free to add. But what's for you personally? Like, I know this is a Kravet show and I keep trying to learn about you. So like you personally, you just love being in the furniture end. Do you feel like you have challenges there ahead of you? Do you feel like you've got your feet under you and you're moving into that part of like you're at the career point where you feel like it's all working, or you're like, I got lots to learn still? Like, I'm just curious, you as a person, Sarah.
I'm a big reader, so I always like learning. I give myself a reading challenge every year for how many books I should read. And
Wow.
I feel like that is just indicative of how I think about things. Like, yes, you reach a certain point, but what's the next point and what do you have to do to get there? So that in itself is motivating. And, I have two young daughters, so I want them to see that the future is female. So
Mm,
really, that's motivation as well.
that's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
How many books is on your challenge for 2024?
17.
Oh my goodness, 17 with a 6-month-old and a 3-year-old and a full-time corporate job. That's beyond my comprehension.
Well, it's not exactly like I'm reading the Iliad, but, it still counts.
Don't do that. That 17 books is awesome. Good for you. Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I have to say, Sarah, it has been a delight getting
Thank
to
you.
know you better and to hearing more about the Kravet furniture and how we can work with it and specify it in our projects. And I really do appreciate your time today.
Thank you. You too. It was really kind of you to invite me.